That was losing £250,000, and it was like being in front of a big one-armed bandit, putting £5,000 in every few minutes, pulling the lever, knowing you got a jackpot in there somewhere. But will the stash of money that you're putting in, will that last?
What was it like the moment you received £70 million into your bank account, Neville?
That was a shit day. That was a dreadful day of my life. But it wasn't the money. There was 3 criteria. I wanted to keep the name. I wanted all the staff to retain their job, and I wanted all the suppliers to be retained. I've always pushed the boundaries all the time, every day. There's 86,400 seconds in the day. You put your goals down, you put your wants, your needs, your hopes, your dreams, and you go for it. And everybody can do it.
In 2011, Neville Wright sold his company to Morrison's for £70 million. This man is a proper entrepreneur. We have teed up part 1 and part 2, so this first episode is over Zoom with the hope of doing a part 2 in this gallery in the future. Be happy, never content, and make sure you are subscribing. Before we start this week's podcast, I have to give a special mention to our sponsors. iSecure Vehicles. They are a brilliant company, a family-run business, and they specialise in vehicle safety and security throughout the UK. I know this company very well, and I also know the people behind the brand. If you've been following me on my podcast journey and on social media, you will know that I love cars, and so does my network. This is why I'm very, very excited to be working with iSecure Vehicles, and this is why we have chosen them to be our sponsors for the Stephen Sully Study podcast. Their team are professionals, experts, and they're efficient. Once their product is installed on your car, your vehicles, you will have the peace of mind that your asset is protected. Trust me, do not wait until it's too late. Get protection now. For more information about their products, including dash cameras, undetected immobilizers, and also car tracking systems, head over to isecure-vehicles.co.uk and remember to mention the Stephen Sully Study podcast sent you. Welcome back to the podcast, Stephen Sully Study. I've got a really, really, really powerful guest in front of me. Sadly, not in person, but over Zoom. We're talking about this man, Neville Wright, the man that founded and sold a very, very large, successful business, Kiddicare, back in 2011, and I wanted to pick his brain for a number of years to find out what goes into starting, scaling, selling a business like that. So welcome on board the podcast, Neville Wright.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you, or over Zoom, rather. Yeah, so it's a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise. Well, just before we recorded, press record, mentioned about potentially doing a part 2 when you come down to London. I know your wife has just had an operation, so maybe in the next few months, I'd love to show you around the Mayfair Gallery and do a proper part 2 in person where we can dig a bit more deeper into business and the crazy world that we're living in right about now. So let's talk about the obvious. You founded a business, you scaled a business, you sold the business in 2011 to Morrison's, I believe, for, I see mixed reports, but I believe it's £70 million. Is that right?
70 million in cash, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I didn't know there was any other figure about.
Yeah, do you know what? I think I've seen on some other weird sites or forums, they talk about the money in dollars. So there's a couple of different variations of it.
Like to say dollars because it's more, or it's more in dollars.
So there's multiple people out there who are wannabe or pursuing entrepreneurship, being a business person, being a businessman or woman. And they have this dream about starting a business, scaling a business, selling the business, and going off into the sunset on a yacht, in a villa, and just enjoying all their wealth. And look, 70 million is a huge amount of money for anybody. What was it like the moment you received £70 million into your bank account, Neville?
Well, that was it. That was a shit day. that was a dreadful day in my life and my wife's life. Bearing in mind that we'd sold that business. This was the fourth time we'd sold it, and we'd already got a portfolio of property worth 30 million at that time. So the money wasn't it wasn't necessary. We didn't need the money. We didn't particularly want it, but what we had done that day, we'd lost probably our the meaning of our life, really, because our daughters were in the business with us, and so I'd worked with them every day since they'd left school at 13, and that was like 34 years in that business, and so it was a dreadful day. And also we had 125 full-time staff, which were friends, and we knew their families, and some of them had been there 20 years, and they'd met people there and got married and got children of their own, and our door was always open. It was like a continual stream in our office, it was, of people coming in, and it wasn't just business we were talking about. It would be anything from what should I do with my next door neighbour is keeping me up all night, to where can I get a mortgage from, and what do I do with my adolescent kid? It's driving me mad. And so therefore it's a real family, it was. And so on that day when the money hit the bank, we didn't go in. It was like the first time in 34 years we hadn't been in, really. But we didn't go in because there was a special payday for everybody, and we knew it'd be kind of traumatic. And I was with a gang of lads who was cleaning out main sewers. It was on one of our industrial sites. We've got 13 units on an industrial site, and there I was at 8 o'clock in the morning, and one of the tenants come out and said, what are you up to? Look down the hole. We've got barriers around the hole. And I looked up, I'd got my goggles on and my hard hat, and I was jet washing, and I said, we're just doing the maintenance, mate. And he says, is that you, Neville? As he looked down, I said, yes, mate. He said, what the are you doing down there? He said, I just heard the news, on the television, and it says you just got 70 million pounds. What are you doing down there? And that's the way I coped with it.
Sort of fill in your time. So I think if I started my podcast journey, like if today was my first ever sort of interview, I would probably talk about this subject slightly differently. But when I started listening to podcasts before I started my own, probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, and then I started my own almost 5 years ago. And I have heard a few people start companies, scale companies, sell companies, and a lot of them did say at the start it was some of the worst days. Some people even say they felt really, really depressed and they had anxiety, etc.
Yeah.
But moving on from there, and I'm not saying this is you, but I'm just trying to play a bit of like devil's advocate, or try and maybe some other questions in the background is, do people say that now? Not you, but do some people say that now who sell businesses because it's like a really good PR kind of statement to make to the audience out there? Or was it a genuine thing that you really didn't like going through that particular day?
Oh, it's genuine. There's more tears than anything. Yeah, and up to that day, when I was doing the due diligence on the company, it was I was hoping they'd find something wrong, and they would say we don't want it. But we had a lot of the high street after us. When we put it up for sale, we had 30 inquiries within a week. We did, and it was all the well-known names from the high street that wanted to buy us. So it was traumatic. It was, and for weeks, it was in turmoil. Our minds were in turmoil because The three businesses we sold before that, we knew we was expanding. We knew there was room for more people and that we was moving and expanding. So that money was good because it enabled us to expand and take us further. So, but this was the end. I say in my book, this was the end, and it wasn't a nice situation. But it had to be done.
Yeah. So selling to Morrison's, I know you just mentioned there was multiple different high street brands, organisations looking at the business. Why did you sell particularly to Morrison's? Now, was it because they offered you the most amount of money, or did you feel that they were the right brand to hold Kiddicare and take it forward?
Yeah, they seemed to be the right brand for me. We made the decision, or I made the decision within 10 minutes of listening to all the offers. There was about 7 offers that come down to around 70 million. There was one for about 79.5 million. And I wanted, there was 3 criteria, that 3 things I wanted. I wanted to keep the name in the business, Kiddicare. I wanted all the staff to retain their jobs, and I wanted all the suppliers, which a lot of them was like very small suppliers, one-man bands, and there were some manufacturers that we'd always gone on well with. I wanted them to be retained. So that was the criteria, and Morrison seemed, well, what we thought seemed to fit, and they didn't have a website, and I knew we could get them online the following day with no problem. And we was doing 40 million turnover a year, and we was going to go up to 200 million. Well, they could have took that to 200 million in no time. They could have done quite easily because all the systems were there, the buildings were there, the stock was there, and the knowledge was there. But they chose to change what wasn't, what I would say wasn't broken. And we'd spent years and years perfecting the systems. We was in front of everybody on the internet, and so we started that 12 years beforehand. So it was way in front of everybody. We was, and that's why we chose Morrison's, because we thought there was a lot of enhancement for both businesses there.
Was there offers by other brands that were substantially more financially than what Morrison's were offering you?
Yeah, about 9.5 million more. But they would have closed. I'm sure they would have closed it down. The suppliers wouldn't have had a chance. The people who was working there, or the families, there was 125 families, 125 people, it was all breadwinners, there was a lot to consider. And I'm sure they would have all gone. But it wasn't the money. It wasn't. What's the difference between 70 million and 79.5? No, when you come to those figures, and we'd already got 30 million in property and a substantial amount of income from property. And on the 3rd of February, we actually got the money in the bank on the 14th of February, but on the 3rd of February, I started up a new business in building with a partner. And so it wasn't like we wanted or needed the money. It wasn't.
Yeah. Understood. So my question to you is this. So Kiddicare, it was a multi-channel retailer, if I've read that right.
Yeah.
And you and your wife, Marilyn, ran the business right up until the end when you sold it over to Morrison's.
Yeah, it was, I just have to tell you this because it's really funny, because there was all the lawyers and all the, accountants and and everybody around the table. And somebody mentioned, they was doing some paperwork, and somebody mentioned Kiddicare Limited. And I go, oh, no, I'll have to stop you there. It's not limited. And they all gasped. All these, there was about 30 people in the room. They all go, what? So it's not limited. It's just between me and Marilyn. We're self-employed. It's just self-employed partnership. And they couldn't believe it. So we had to make it limited for a few hours.
That's crazy. I would never, ever expect that. Why did you not, from the outset, make it a limited company?
Well, when we started, I started as a window cleaner. And then the business didn't have a name. And then the business went into decorating, right way decorating. And then we went into property maintenance. And then we started keeping houses and renovating houses. So we called it Marble Properties. And then our first shop was called Rainbow Warehouse. And it was like all the money was going into one bank account. And it was, and then after a few years, we split the bank account. So we had Marble Properties and we had Kiddicare. But we were just sole traders. Never even thought, and I was paying like 50% tax. But also, there was an advantage because I could get 50% tax relief on everything that we bought, and our pensions and all that kind of stuff. So it worked very well for us. It did. And then people used to say you ought to be limited because of limited liability, because if anything happened, you'd be responsible. I go, well, I am responsible. You can't take that away from us. We are responsible people. And probably didn't understand, the complications that could have happened. But, things happen, and you have to step up to the mark, but we never did go limited,
Guys, I wanted to hop on here to once again thank the sponsors of this week's podcast, I Secure Vehicles. When we were searching around for sponsors for the channel, we honestly wanted to get a brand, a company that will give massive amount of value to our audience. And that is definitely I Secure Vehicles. They have a wide range of products which are designed to keep your vehicle, your asset, safe and secure. Some of those products are dash cameras, undetected immobilizers, and car tracking systems. Head over to iSecure to look at their products and make sure you say that the Stephen Sully Study podcast sent you there. So my question to you, in all of those years you were running the company, there must have been days, weeks, months, even a few years sometimes where you felt the pressure, you felt anxiety, you felt maybe the fear and the unknown. And the reason why I asked you this question is because people could look at a lot of these big companies, from Richard Branson's to your good self or to Steve Bartlett's companies, and see all the great stuff. But that comes with a bit of sacrifice, dedication, hard work, and sometimes sleepless nights. Walk me through some of those days where you felt to yourself, is this all worth it? Can I actually get through this moment? Share some of that.
Yeah. So there was a lot of tears. There's always a lot of tears when you're running your own business. There's always a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of things that don't go to plan, maybe because you don't have a plan, because all this is new. We'd never been in business. We'd never employed any staff. We'd never done any health and safety or regulations or what you have with a business. Now, usually, if somebody starts a business, they learn this and they can cope with it. But we was expanding all the time, every day. We used to get into that shop at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 8 o'clock at night when we was coming out of it, that had changed. We changed the systems, we changed the methods, we changed the way retailing was. We was in the lead, and we was on the crest of the wave. And when you're on changing all the time and going into new territory, you're going into the unknown. You are. So there is a lot of pressure. And when things go wrong, and usually it's about cash flow that goes wrong, and it's recessions. And when we was in the recession of 2007, 8, 6, 7, 8, there was too much day left at the end of the money. And there was a juggling. You had to juggle the finances. And when the shit hit the fan in 2009, and we thought we'd got it covered we'd got the residential property, we was building, selling, renting, we'd got commercial property that we was renting, flipping, and we'd got the nursery equipment business online and in the shop. We'd got clothes, kids' clothes online in the shop, and we'd got the toys. We thought nothing could happen. If one went down, the other one would carry us through. Everything went down in 2009, and we ended up. It was like rapid. Within weeks, we had. We should have been paying a £14 million loan off that we just spent on this state-of-the-art warehouse and shop, and that should have been paid off in 3 years of profits. But unfortunately, instead of making like 250,000 profit in a month, we was making 250,000 loss in a month, and we had to sell our house, which was like a mansion. We'd lived in it. It was 8,000 square foot, 8 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, 8 indoor swimming pool, luxury, 2 acres of lovely manicured gardens, and we just had to sell that and walk out of it with our suitcases and live in our office for 2.5 years. So when people when they see from the outside, they don't know what goes on in the inside. I could have run away, or we could have run away quite easily when the shit hit the fan, because we've got a £3 million pension, and we could have sailed off into the sunset and forgot about everything. But we discussed this, and we discussed it in depth for about 5 seconds. Do we run or do we stay? Because we've got 125 staff that relied on us. I could start the following day as a window cleaner and make a living, but not everybody wants to be self-employed, and those people had brought us through the good times. And so therefore, when the bad times, you have to stand up. And I actually got that 3 million out of the pension legally. I did, and I put it all into the business, and I sold the house, and the houses were dropping like a stone. It was worth 2.5 million a year before. The agent said, put it on 2.25. I said, no, I've got to get in front of the curve because it's going down. So I put it at 175 and sold it in a week. And so sometimes people think you're mad, but if I'd have hung on, it would have gone down to 1.5 and then $1 million. So all that money went into the saving the business, and then we got through it. And within, there was losing £250,000 a month, and it was like being in front of a big one-armed bandit, putting $5,000 in every few minutes, pulling the lever, knowing you got a jackpot in there somewhere. But will the stash of money that you're putting in, will that last? And that is fear and determination and guts and thinking. I mean, we started off in a 10-foot caravan, but it was like we could go back to living in a caravan. I could go back to window cleaning, and the people there, most of them couldn't or wouldn't.
It's that paradox of getting that balance. I don't think it's balance. I don't know what the word I'm trying to find, but perseverance, pressing on, biting down on your gum shield and attacking forward, or just saying, hang on a minute, this is financial suicide. We carry on doing this because of our pride and ego. We're probably going to go bankrupt. Now, I'm not saying that was for you, but there are scenarios where businesses are going through that. And I refer to right now, a year ago, it was, look at the watch market. There were certain Patek Philippe's that were commanding on, Chrono 24, £300,000. Those same watches today, they've come down to 100, sub 100 grand. And you've got high inflation now. You've got the mortgage hikes. You've got a lot of uncertainty within the economy. And I feel a few businesses are probably going through this very uncertain patch where they're having these same conversations. Do we press forward, or do we just say enough's enough?
Well, I think it reminds me of 2006, when I was saying to everybody, there's a recession, and people going, no, don't be so daft. The market's booming. Go, no, the market may be booming, but down on the ground, there is a recession coming, and it's coming fast. And I said this 3 years ago on that day where we was locked down. I said, there's a reset. Well, I said, this is the start of World War III. I said, it is the start of the biggest recession ever. And of course, everybody kept saying, no, you're wrong. I mean, I've just got £10,000 given me, and this is, I'm doing nothing, and I've just got 25,000 loan at 2%. And it's like, I've got a new car. This is what people were saying. And everything is booming. Well, it's been artificial for the last 3 years. It's artificial. Now, and I said, it's like a frog been put into warm water 3 years ago. The gas is being turned up. While we've got gas, that is.
Yeah.
So it's like, it feels like 2006 to me. But when it was 2006, you knew at one day the recession will be over. Like in all the recessions we've had since we started business in 1974, there's been downturns, and there was a downturn then. And, in the 80s and the 90s, there's always been downturns, and then it's come back. Because one day we'll be out of the recession. But I don't know this time, because there is a wicked agenda going on in the world that is playing out that I've never seen before, because I think it's been under wraps for 50 years or however long. But I feel that it's a bit different, unless people stand up and are counted and fight for their rights. Anyway.
Totally agreed. I mean, part of the reason why I want to do this podcast part 2 is because the elements that you're touching on right now, I feel like we speak the same language and we share the same mindset. And I feel like this is a subject I could talk about for hours. And sadly, today I sadly don't, because I've got a few people coming into the gallery, but it's definitely something I'm gonna turn into a little bit more when I meet you in person. Just to round that part off, 2020, the whole lockdown, I think it was handled very badly, and I think people that I class as very switched on, sophisticated, professional individuals suddenly became idiots. And I'm talking about some lawyers I knew and some really educated accountants, and you kind of started seeing people just being controlled and just following the herd. And I think on top of that, it damaged a lot of people's mental health. I think it damaged a lot of businesses, and ultimately it damaged the economy, and everybody's paying for it right now.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I would I said on the first week to people, you've left because we've got properties with 350 people working in offices. I built a place in 2012, 350 people, 350 desks, and then overnight they'd gone. But there was a lot of that, and we had 150 tenants at the time, and all disappeared and left their buildings. So Marilyn and I used to go round day and night like security, 150 buildings. So there was one thing that I used to say when I got hold of the person or spoke to the person, whoever it was, our tenants, okay, in your business, when you used to run it in the offices or the warehouse, what we was provided, did you have a health and safety program? And they go, oh yeah, because you have to. Yeah, you have to be really strict on health and safety and all the things that. And I go, you do, don't you? Because the insurance comes round and checks everything. Checks your certificates, your electric and your gas and your water, and checks your full trucks and all the stuff that you use. Yeah. So therefore, you do a health and safety check around everybody's desk, don't you? And yeah, of course we do. Yeah. How many of your employees' houses have you been round to check the health and safety in there? Because you've just sent them home. You send them home with a computer. Some of them are working, haven't got a desk, they're working off an ironing board or off on their couch or whatever. You're responsible for the right ergonomical chairs and trips and slips and falls and wires and fire extinguishers. And not one of them had been around any of their employees' house to do a risk assessment. What the hell was going on? They left their brains behind. It's like people buying abroad when they get, because the estate agents used to say, and I bought abroad quite a few times, but estate agents used to say to me, Neville, when people get off the plane, they leave their brains on the plane. They do, and it's like they left their brains in their workplace. And I can never understand what the hell went on in people's minds not to do risk assessments and method statements for all the staff that they let work at home. And they still haven't done it.
Yeah, I mean, look, this conversation is definitely a rabbit hole that has multiple layers of stupidity that was attached to some of the things that went down and some of the people's mindsets and the language that people were using at the time. And I feel a lot of people now, I think at the time when it started, there was a lot more people a little bit more for what was going on. There was only a few, and I would say I was one of them that felt like I could see a little bit through this kind of weird scenario, this narrative. Then there was like a 50-50 camp, like halfway through it. And then now at the back end of it, we're all reflecting, this is hindsight, and we're like, that was pretty dumb, wasn't it? That was pretty stupid, all like giving away free money to businesses, and then obviously they shut the businesses down, they disappear, and now the government is increasing taxes to try and claw that money back. It's an obvious sort of play what they've done, but like I said, Neville, I feel like if we open up this conversation even more, I think we'll be here forever and a day. So I want to...
Well, we'll be here for hours.
But I do promise when I meet you, we're going to really go into it. You strike me... No, it's not even you strike me. You are a very, very sensible chap who's got your head screwed on. Not only because you sold your company for 70 million, but there's a lot of people that may have had similar sort of success and then blown a lot, majority of their money on Lamborghinis, alcohol, drugs, multiple homes around the world. But I know from listening to other podcasts, listening to the way you talk and what you just said there, you built up a property empire. So when you sold, you had £30 million in property. And I think in the last time I sort of heard on a podcast, you've got probably roughly about 90 million, 100 million in property. Is that right?
I'll go with your judgment. I thought it was about double that, but there you are.
Okay. Well, it must have been an older podcast I listened to then. So, but anyway, whether it's 100 or 200 million,
it doesn't make a difference.
Who taught you? Who gave you the guidance? Who mentored you to put your money into assets that pay you each month?
One person called Arthur Dye. I met when I was 13, and I think he was a cousin of mine, or he was a relation in the family. He was, and he drove. I was at his house in Leominster, in near Wales. We was on holiday, and we was there for a night, and he drove up in a new Land Rover. And the next morning, obviously, I had heard my mother and father talking, because I wouldn't have said anything to him. But he drove up, and I said, "Arthur, how can you afford that?" That was not my words. I must have heard it from my parents. How can he afford that? A brand new Land Rover. Anyway, I said, "How can you afford that?" And he goes, "Neville." And I realised then he was speaking to my mum and dad, who stood next to me. He said, "Neville, you have to speculate to accumulate in life." And I thought, that's great. I haven't got a clue what you're talking about, but that played on my mind for years. I must speculate to accumulate, because I want one of those. I want that. And so there was a want. So that was at 13, but my father taught me at 4 years old. He did. He used to say to me, I used to go up the street and meet him, and I used to sit in his bicycle basket, and he always used to say to me, "Oh, I could have had that shop, could have been in partnership with that shop," because he was a carpenter and French polisher, and he was a very skilled person, but he worked at the electricity board, and the person who owned the shop wanted him to go in partnership, and he said, "I could have had that and this, and I would have done this and done that," and he used to say, "I should have," and I heard "I should have" up until I was 15. I heard it a million times. And at 15, I promised myself I would never say "I should have" in my life. So that was a great thing. The other things were, which was great, everybody called me stupid. So my parents called me stupid, my brother and sister called me stupid, the school teachers called me stupid, and the kids called me stupid, right? And I wasn't stupid. I was dyslexic. So I didn't see what other people saw. I couldn't see. And I asked my wife now, so we've been married 53 years, and I asked her each day, "How do you spell this, that, the other?" 3 letters at a time. And she said, "I told you 5 minutes ago." I go, "Yeah, but I see words and they jumble up." And I wrote this book. I wrote this book. The answer is yes. Now, what is the question? Right. And it's 140,000 words. I wrote 1,000,000 words, and all my ons were no's. It's like I got so much mixed up, place and where and minute, and it's like, so anyway, there's 140,000 words there, which are all correct, but 3.5 years that took, and that was determination, and I needed to write that book after I left. So
there's a lesson now, yeah.
And it was like, "Oh, I will show you," And when I was 13, we had a reading class every Wednesday afternoon, reading class. And every boy used to have to stand up and read the page. I didn't even know what sentence or what page we was on. I hadn't got a clue. And this teacher said, "Right, Neville," and they never used to call me by it. First name, "Right, okay," and I was silent, and he came up to me. I was 13. I had a leather jacket on, Cuban heels, light blue jeans, and it was like all the mod things in those days. I was like the person, because I was the only one who could afford the proper leather jacket in our class, because I was the only one that worked. And anyway, the thing is, he grabbed I had long hair, like you used to in those, and he grabbed my hair and he twisted it round and he pulled me off my seat. And he shouted in my ear, read it, boy." I couldn't. And I just cried. And this lump was protruding out of my head by then. And that bastard would be in jail now if he did that now. Anyway, the thing is, everybody laughed when everybody was screaming with laughter. And when we went down the corridor, some kids looked back to me and said, "You're thick, you're a Dumbo, And I said, "We're going to leave school soon. In a few weeks, we're going to leave school, and you're going to get a job, and I'm going to get a secretary." And where that come from, I don't know. I haven't got a clue. But the thing is, you need people around you to help you. If you're like an entrepreneur, then you can't do everything. And I couldn't read or write. I couldn't even spell my name when I left school. So I used to get around the wrong way. So that was encouragement to me to prove that I wasn't what the teachers said. You won't amount to anything in life.
There's a couple of lessons there that I just picked up. One, if you've got someone very successful in front of you, no matter whether that's someone financially better off, a better golfer than you, better footballer than you, a teacher, well, let's say someone that you admire, one bit of advice or a soundbite can literally change the course of your whole entire life. And the other lesson is, if someone says you've got dyslexia, ADHD, or these so-called problems, in actual fact, they can always be a bit of a superpower for that particular person if they use it right. Neville, I've got to go upstairs to the gallery, but I'll ask you this one last question. My catchphrase is this: be happy, never content. Now, I've got my own interpretation of that, but if I were to ask the man who sold Kiddicare in 2011, Mr. Neville Wright, what does be happy, never content mean to you?
I've always pushed the boundaries all the time, every day. There's 86,400 seconds in the day, and it's like, what can we do? And we have the goals. You put your goals down, you put your wants, your needs, your hopes, your dreams, and you go for it. And everybody can do it. Well, no, I could do it because that's what I wanted to do. And you push the boundaries every day, and that's what makes you happy.
That's it. Neville, thanks a lot for your time. I look forward to seeing you very soon. We'll stay connected, and I really appreciate this, and I look forward to get this podcast out. All right?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Enjoy, and speedy recovery to your wife.
I'll let her know.
Thank you, mate. Bye.
Bye.
Guys, before we end this episode, I have to give one more mention to this week's sponsors, iSecure Vehicles. Now, I've already mentioned their products. They are the very best in what they do. They have a wide range of different services and different systems to protect your asset and your vehicle. Head over to their website to find out a bit more. Thanks for watching this week's episode. There's going to be some more exciting guests, some big names, and some really, really juicy episodes.